In the last flywheel video on this channel, we called self-discharge the dealbreaker. A spinning disc that loses most of its charge overnight was never going to replace your home battery, and that's still true. What we didn't cover is the company that built a flywheel specifically to fix that problem, and what happened when engineers finally traded speed for weight to solve it. Quick reminder why the first video landed where it did. A carbon fiber flywheel spins fast and light, which is exactly what makes it lose energy fast too. Air resistance is eliminated with a vacuum enclosure. Friction is eliminated with magnetic bearings. But there's still windage, bearing losses, and the electronics keeping the whole system alive. And on a light, fast rotor, those losses eat the stored energy in hours, sometimes less. That's why Beacon Power's Stephentown plant, the flagship case for this technology, was built entirely around 15-minute bursts of grid frequency regulation. It never claimed otherwise. The technology did exactly what it was designed to do. The unsolved question we left hanging was whether that 15-minute ceiling was a fundamental law of physics or just a choice tied to one material. It turns out to be the second one, and a small California company answered it by throwing out the material that made flywheels fast in the first place. Amber Kinetics builds its rotor from roughly 5,000 pounds of solid steel instead of carbon fiber. Steel is heavier and it spins slower, and on paper that sounds like a downgrade. But remember what drove the self-discharge problem in the first place. A light, fast rotor bleeds energy quickly relative to what it's storing. A heavy, slow rotor bleeds energy just as slowly in absolute terms, but it's carrying so much more stored energy that the percentage loss per hour drops dramatically. The company's own technical filings with the Department of Energy state the goal plainly. Flywheel storage had traditionally been stuck at seconds to minutes, specifically because of self-discharge, and the fix wasn't a smarter bearing or a better vacuum seal. It was a completely different rotor. That trade-off is worth sitting with for a moment, because it's the whole engineering story compressed into one decision. Carbon fiber became the material of choice for the first generation of flywheels precisely because it's light enough to spin at tens of thousands of RPM without tearing itself apart, and stored energy scales with the square of rotational speed. Double the spin rate and you quadruple the energy stored for the same mass. That relationship is what made fast carbon fiber rotors look like the obvious future of the technology for years. Amber Kinetics essentially walked away from that whole approach. A rotor built from solid steel can't spin anywhere near as fast, so it gives up the speed side of that equation entirely and makes up for it with raw mass instead, spinning at a small fraction of a carbon fiber rotor's RPM. The genuinely counterintuitive part is that this slower, heavier design is what finally stretched flywheel discharge from minutes into hours, by making the percentage lost to self-discharge small enough not to matter over that longer window. The result is the M32, an 8 kilowatt, 32 kilowatt-hour unit, and Amber Kinetics describes it as the first commercialized flywheel with a 4-hour discharge duration. 4 hours, not 4 minutes. That's the number the carbon fiber generation of this technology was never built to reach, and it's the direct answer to the limitation the last video ended on. The company didn't just publish a spec sheet and hope someone believed it. In 2016, Pacific Gas and Electric signed a 20-year energy services agreement for a 20-megawatt, 80-megawatt-hour installation in Fresno, California, called Energy Nuevo, built specifically around the 4-hour Gen 2 flywheel design. At the time, the company described it as one of the largest transmission-level flywheel installations ever contracted, and a 20-year utility agreement is not the kind of commitment a utility signs on a technology it doesn't expect to still be running 2 decades from now. The following year, Enel, one of the largest utilities in the world, signed a 2-year agreement to test 2 M32 units at Amber Kinetics' own facility, with a plan to move to a larger 40-kilowatt, 160 kilowatt-hour unit at one of Enel's thermal power plants if the pilot held up. Hawaiian Electric ran its own pilot the same year at a generating station on Oahu, specifically because Hawaii was already pulling over a quarter of its electricity from solar and wind and needed storage that could survive real duty cycles, not just a demonstration. There's a reason utilities kept lining up for pilots rather than just buying units outright. And it's worth explaining because it says something honest about how new storage technology actually gets adopted. A 20-year contract or a full deployment is an enormous financial commitment, and no utility risk manager signs off on that based on a manufacturer's brochure. The pilot stage exists specifically to generate the kind of independently observed data that can survive a utility commission's scrutiny. Amber Kinetics went through that gate multiple times, with multiple separate utilities, in multiple different climates, which is a meaningfully different track record than a single flagship project. If you've enjoyed the video so far, we'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, because the next part is where this stops being a company's own claims and starts being someone else's math. An independent engineering firm ran the numbers for California's Emerging Technologies Coordinating Council using real test data from a 25 kilowatt-hour Amber Kinetics unit against actual San Diego gas and electric time of use rates. Under the state's incentive program, the payback period came out to between 2.1 and 3.2 years, with an internal rate of return between 33 and 49%. That's not a company's marketing brochure. That's a third party running someone else's spreadsheet. And the durability numbers are the part that should genuinely surprise anyone who watched the first video. Because the rotor is 98% steel by weight, there's no lithium chemistry inside it to degrade, and Amber Kinetics documents unlimited daily cycling with no measurable loss in power or capacity across an entire 30-year design life. The company's own installation data, verified through its Department of Energy demonstration reporting, puts cumulative fleet runtime past 1 million operating hours, a figure later reported at over 1.6 million hours in a 2025 partnership announcement with Kawasaki Heavy Industries, aimed at pairing flywheel storage with grid-stabilizing generator technology. Routine maintenance is a bearing swap roughly once a decade, according to the company's own vice president of project development, and that's the whole service list. No cell balancing, no thermal management, no chemistry to replace when it wears out, because there isn't any chemistry to begin with. That maintenance claim deserves a moment of real scrutiny rather than just repeating it, because once a decade is doing a lot of work in that sentence. A bearing swap on an 8 kilowatt unit sitting in a utility yard is a straightforward job for a trained technician. But scale that across an 80 megawatt-hour installation built from dozens or hundreds of individual 32 kilowatt-hour units, and once a decade per unit turns into a rolling maintenance schedule that never really stops, just moves from one unit to the next. That's not a hidden flaw, and it's still dramatically simpler than managing a battery bank's thermal system and eventual cell replacement, but it's worth being precise about what low maintenance means at fleet scale versus what it sounds like for a single machine. So the self-discharge problem from the first video has a real, deployed, independently verified answer, which is exactly the moment to ask what the market did with it, because a working fix and a successful product are two different things, and this is where the correction has to go both ways. The honest catch is scale, and it's a big one. Amber Kinetics' flagship unit stores 32 kilowatt-hours. A single modern lithium battery container built for 4-hour discharge typically holds somewhere between 4 and 6 megawatt-hours, and the largest units on the market now push past that. Do the arithmetic, and matching a 100 megawatt-hour battery project with M32 units would take upward of 3,000 individual flywheels, each with its own foundation, its own power electronics, its own physical footprint. That's before counting the balance of plant costs, the site engineering, or the maintenance visits across 3,000 separate machines instead of one containerized battery bank. The steel rotor solved self-discharge. It didn't solve the space and cost problem that comes with needing that many units to match what a single battery enclosure delivers. Put another way, the Energy Nuevo project in Fresno, genuinely one of the largest flywheel installations ever built, stores 80 megawatt-hours. A single large battery storage project commissioned in the same general period can match or exceed that from one site with a fraction of the individual moving parts. That's not a knock on what Amber Kinetics built. It's a real reminder that first commercialized 4-hour flywheel and competitive with grid-scale lithium on raw storage density are two different achievements, and only the first one has actually happened. There's a second honest catch, and it's not about economics. It's about physics failing the way steel fails rather than the way batteries fail. A lithium battery's worst-case failure is thermal runaway, a chemical fire that can be slow to detect and hard to extinguish. A large steel rotor spinning at speed has a different worst case. If a crack propagates through the material while it's rotating, it can release fragments at very high velocity, essentially controlled shrapnel. The Department of Energy's own 2024 safety strategy for storage technologies specifically flags flywheels as generally unattractive for very large installations because of cost, safety, and space requirements together, and names rotor containment as the central engineering challenge. Amber Kinetics' response is that its rotor is 98% steel with no combustible chemistry, which is true and genuinely reduces one entire category of risk. It doesn't remove the different, mechanical category of risk that comes with any large mass spinning at speed, and any honest comparison has to hold both of those realities at once, rather than picking whichever one flatters the pitch. It's worth being clear about what that containment risk actually means in practice, rather than leaving it as an abstract warning. Amber Kinetics and other flywheel manufacturers address it through engineered enclosures, designed to contain a rotor failure, rather than by claiming failure can't happen. The same basic philosophy a pressure vessel uses: assume the worst case and build the containment to survive it, rather than assume the worst case never arrives. That's a legitimate engineering approach, and it's standard practice across rotating machinery generally, from turbines to jet engines. It's also a genuinely different maintenance and inspection discipline than a battery bank requires, with its own certification requirements. And it's one more reason the per-unit cost of a flywheel installation doesn't shrink as fast as the just steel and a motor description makes it sound. So here's the corrected picture, and it's more useful than either the original hype or the original deflation. The self-discharge wall from carbon fiber flywheels is real, and Amber Kinetics broke through it with a genuinely different engineering approach rather than a marginal improvement, verified by an independent utility study and backed by a real 20-year utility contract. That part of the story checks out completely. What doesn't check out is any version of this that implies steel flywheels are now a drop-in replacement for grid-scale lithium storage. They're not competing on the same axis. A battery container wins on energy density and footprint, hands down, every time you need to pack a lot of storage into a small space. A steel flywheel wins on service life, on cycling without any degradation curve at all, on operating in temperature extremes from well below freezing to desert heat without a thermal management system, and on being 95% recyclable at the end of that 30-year life instead of ending up in a hazardous waste stream. That's the actual decision in front of anyone evaluating long-duration storage today, and it's a real one, not a marketing choice dressed up as one. If the priority is maximum energy in the smallest possible footprint, a battery bank wins, and it isn't close. If the priority is a site where the storage needs to run for decades with almost no maintenance, where temperature swings would stress a battery management system, or where the operator specifically wants to avoid any chemical fire risk regardless of the mechanical trade-off, a steel flywheel installation like Energy Nuevo or the Enel Pilot is a legitimate, independently verified option, not a consolation prize. There's one more angle worth naming before the practical part, because it changes who this technology is actually for. Almost every example in this video is a utility-scale project, megawatts and megawatt-hours, signed by companies with engineering departments and procurement teams. None of that is directly available to an individual property owner the way a residential battery is, and pretending otherwise would repeat the same overreach the first video was correcting. What the Amber Kinetics story actually offers a homesteader or an off-grid property owner isn't a product to buy today. It's a framework for reading the next pitch that lands in your inbox. When a company claims to have solved flywheel storage, the first question is which specific limitation they solved: self-discharge, duration, cost, footprint, and which ones they didn't touch at all. Amber Kinetics solved duration and did it honestly, with independent verification to back it up. That's a real achievement. It's also not the same as solving the footprint and cost problem that still separates flywheels from batteries at any scale smaller than a utility contract. The tool here is the same one that decided Amber Kinetics' own case studies. Run your own numbers before you assume either technology wins by default. Take your storage target in kilowatt hours and divide it by 32 to see how many flywheel units that would actually require on your site. Then compare that footprint and that maintenance schedule against a single battery container rated for the same capacity. If the flywheel count comes back in the dozens for a small commercial or agricultural site, the maintenance simplicity and the multi-decade lifespan can genuinely outweigh the footprint difference. If it comes back in the thousands, you already have your answer, and it's the one the scale critique points to. One correction closes the loop on the other one. The last video's verdict, that flywheels can't touch batteries on long-duration home storage, was accurate for the carbon fiber technology it was built around. It was never the full story for the technology as a whole, because a company had already spent years proving the opposite was possible for a specific class of installation, just not the one most viewers were picturing. So here's my question for you. If you were sizing storage for a property with a real, sustained load, a barn, a well, a shop running all day, would you take the steel flywheel that never degrades but takes up real space, or the battery bank that's compact and efficient, but is quietly aging every single day it sits there? Tell me which way you'd go in the comments.